بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله أما بعد فإن أحسن الكلام كلام الله وخير الهدى هدى محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم وإن شر الأمور محدثاتها وكل محدثة بدعة وكل بدعة ضلالة وكل ضلالة في النار. So today is our 7th lesson on the first section, first chapter in riyaadhus, saliheen, and this is on ikhlas and having the niyyah to be present, to bringing the niyyah to mind when doing deeds. And so we're right at the end. We have the last 3 ahadith to discuss before we complete this chapter. And just to recap, the first hadith was the hadith, the foundational hadith, إِنَّمَا الْأَعْمَالُ بِالنِّيَّاتِ, and the Shaykh rahimahullah extracted numerous principles from that hadith regarding the intention itself, and how is a deed formed. Every deed must by necessity have an intention behind it, and what's the outcome. وَلِكُلِّ امْرِئٍ مَّا نَوَى. This is referring to the outcome, that every man shall have that which he intended, which is the reward, or whatever was the motive behind his deed. He spoke about the hijrah and some rulings to do with hijrah. So that first hadith was really the foundation. And as for the remaining ahadith, the 11 ahadith which come after, they simply provide further explanation and further rulings to do with the niyyah and motives and so on and so forth. And so we come really to the end, the final 3 hadith which bring the chapter to a close. So the hadith number 10 is the hadith of Abu Hurraira radiyallahu anhu. وعن أبي هريرة رضي الله عنه قال قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم صلاة الرجل في جماعة تزيد على صلاته في بيته وصلاته في سوقه بدعا وعشرين درجة. He said, the prayer of a man in congregation increases over his prayer in his house or in the market by 20 odd times, by 20 odd degrees or ranks. وذلك أن أحدهم إذا توضأ فأحسن الوضوء ثم أتى المسجد لا ينهزه إلا الصلاة لا يريد إلا الصلاة فلم يخطو خطوة إلا رفع له بها درجة وحط عنه بها تخطئة حتى يدخل al-masjid. So he says after that, this is because one of you, when he makes wudu and he performs it well, and then he comes to the mosque, and there is nothing which compels him or urges him except the prayer, and he does not desire except the prayer. So this really is the shahid, is the point of evidence in the hadith, that nothing made him leave his house, and nothing urged him, nothing incited him to leave the house for anything except the prayer, and he desires nothing except the prayer. And thus he does not take any step except that his rank is raised by a degree, and وحط عنه بها خطيئة, and a sin, an evil, a sinful deed is removed from him until he enters the masjid. So that's until he enters the mosque. فَإِذَا دَخَلَ الْمَسْجِدِ كَانَ فِي الصَّلَاةِ مَا كَانَتِ الصَّلَاةُ هِيَ تَحْبِسُهُ. So when he enters the masjid, he is engaged in a salah, prayer, so long as it is the prayer that keeps him there, that keeps him in the mosque. والملائكة يصلون على أحدكم ما دام في مجلسه الذي صلى فيه يقولون اللهم ارحمه اللهم اغفر له Allahumma tub alayh ma lam yu'dhi fih ma lam yuhdith fih. So he said at the end of the hadith that when he then enters the mosque, then he is engaged in prayer so long as it is the prayer that is holding him back in the masjid. And the angels, yusalluna ala ahadikum, that the angels make supplication for him so long as he is in his place where he prayed. They say, "O Allah, have mercy upon him. O Allah, forgive him. O Allah, turn to him, accept his repentance." So long as he does not harm anybody, ma lam yu'dhi fih, so long as he does not harm anybody in the mosque, and so long as he does not exit his state of purification. So regarding this hadith, and in fact there's another version of the hadith, but the Shaykh, where the Shaykh explains the meaning of yanhazu, a word which occurs in the hadith, and it means that which causes him to leave his house. Anyhow, the Shaykh begins the explanation and he says that when a person prays in the masjid with the jama'ah, then this is far superior than the prayer in his house or in the market. It is superior by 27 times, because establishing the prayer in the jama'ah is to fulfill that which Allah has obligated of the salatul jama'ah. And then the Shaykh goes on to mention what is the strongest view of the people of knowledge. They say that the jama'ah is fardu ayn, so it is an individual obligation, and that it is upon every person to pray with the jama'ah in the masjid. And there are numerous ahadith which are related in this respect, and also because of what is indicated in the Quran by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in his book when he said وَإِذَا كُنْتَ فِيهِمْ فَأَقَمْتَ لَهُمُ الصَّلَاةِ. So he said that when you are amongst them and you establish for them the prayer, فَلْتَقُمْ طَائِفَةٌ مِّنْهُمْ مَعَكَ, then let a faction from among them stand alongside you. So here, this ayah is in fact in reference to Salatul Khawf, which is the prayer of fear. So here Allah Azza wa Jal, in this ayah, which is in Surah An-Nisa, He's addressing the Messenger of Allah and saying that when you stand among them and you establish for them the prayer, then let a group from among them establish the prayer along with you. So this is in the state of fear when there is fighting taking place. So if Allah obligated it here in this place, then in the hal of al-aman, in the state of security and safety, feeling safe, then min bab awla wa ahra, then obviously it is more, even more so the case that it is obligatory. So this is what the Shaykh says, that it is a fardu ayn. And some of the other scholars, they do give some tafsil to the issue, such as Sheikh bin Baz, rahimahullah, and they say that the obligation is to respond to the adhan. So if you hear the adhan without any loudspeaker, with the normal voice of the mu'adhin, which is not amplified, and you hear the adhan, you are in proximity to the adhan, then it is wajib upon you to respond to the adhan. And if you can't hear the adhan and you are distant away, then it is afdal, it is better and highly encouraged and strongly encouraged to attend the masjid to pray the prayer in jama'ah. So anyhow, the Shaykh goes on to say that in the hadith, the Messenger of Allah ﷺ, he went on to mention the reason why the person receives all of this reward. He says it is because the man makes wudu in his house, he performs it well, then he leaves his house to the masjid, and nothing has taken him out of his house except the prayer. And so every step he takes, his rank is raised by a degree, and a khati'ah, sin, a mistake, a sin is wiped away from him. And so this is irrespective of whether he is close to the masjid or he's far away from the masjid. irrespective. Every step gives him two benefits. The first is Allah raises his rank, and the second is that Allah removes a sin of his. So no doubt the Shaykh says this is وَهَذَا فَضْلٌ عَظِيمٌ, this is a mighty virtue and excellence. And this happens until he then enters the mosque. So it doesn't stop at just entering the mosque, even when he enters the mosque. So when he enters the mosque and he prays, it is written for him, and when he sits and waits for the prayer, then he is engaged in the prayer. فَإِنَّهُ فِي صَلَاةٍ مَنْ تَظَرَ الصَّلَاةِ. So he's engaged in prayer so long as he is waiting for the prayer. And so this also is, the Shaykh says, a ni'mah azima, another great and mighty benefit. And if he was to remain waiting for the prayer for a long time, he's sitting, just sitting, not even praying. And after he's prayed the Tahiyatul Masjid, so he comes to the prayer, prays his 2 rak'ahs, sits, waits for the prayer, whether that might be 15 minutes, half an hour, whatever it might be, and he sits and waits. He is engaged in salah all that time until he establishes the prayer. So he will be considered to be as one, who is in prayer, and he will have the reward of that. And then the Shaykh says there's also another thing as well, on top of everything that's been mentioned so far, which is that even the angels then pray for him, make dua for him, and so long as he's sitting in that place, and the angels say, Allahumma salli alayhi, Allahumma gfir lahu, Allahumma arhamh, Allahumma tub alayhi. They make all of these supplications for that individual, for forgiveness, for mercy, for Allah turning to him and accepting from him, and so on and so forth. So again, all of this is another great and mighty benefit for the one who attends the masjid with this niyyah, بهذه النية. So again, the niyyah, as the Shaykh says, ثم خرج من بيته إلى المسجد لا يخرجه إلا الصلاة. So nothing has made him leave except the prayer. This is the important part, because there are many scenarios, many situations where a person, and the Shaykh actually gives an example here, a person might leave his house, and when he leaves the house, his intention is to go to the shop. Or it could be something else, some other errand, some other thing that he's got to do, and that's what makes him leave the house. So while he's out, the adhan is given for the prayer, and so now, obviously, he goes to the prayer. Now this person, he didn't leave his house for the same reason mentioned in the hadith. Because in the hadith, nothing made him leave except the prayer. He did not desire except the prayer. So here, in this scenario, this person, he will only be rewarded from the point at which he makes his way to the masjid from wherever he is, his workplace, the marketplace, whatever he went to, and that's where it will start for him. He's not like the one who makes his wudu in preparation for the prayer. Nothing makes him leave except the prayer. So these two people are not equal. Also, sometimes, the Shaykh finishes here, but just to add another point as well, sometimes a person might leave the masjid and he thinks, well, if I go to the mosque, I might meet so-and-so person at the masjid, and I want to speak to him about, could be some trade, some business, some other worldly matter. So let me go to the masjid and I'll see so-and-so person there. Again, so now now the pure intention is no longer there anymore. Why? Because now something else has entered into the heart or the mind. There's another motive, there's another, some sort of maslahah that he's seeking. This now is no longer absolute, pure intention for the sake of Allah. And so these kind of circumstances often they can be found with a person, that what's his motive, what's his consideration in doing what he's doing. Is it pure? Is there some other thing mixed in with it? And so that's why these hadith are very important, because the wording, as we said, ثم خرج من بيته إلى المسجد لا يخرجه إلا الصلاة. Right? So this is an absolute negation of every other thing. لا يخرجه. And making an exception only for that one thing, إلا الصلاة, only the prayer. And so this shows that whoever has the utmost sincerity in his deeds, then he is the one who will have all of those rewards mentioned in the hadith, from the raising of the rank, from the removal of the sins, from being rewarded as if he was praying all that time for the time that he's sitting and waiting, and then having the angels make all of that supplication for him, right? That's the reward for sincerity, for ikhlas. So now we have the next hadith, hadith number 11. And this is a hadith of Abu Abbas, Abdullah ibn Abbas bin Abdul Muttalib, radiyallahu anhu, عن رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم فيما يروي عن ربه تبارك وتعالى قال إن الله كتب الحسنات والسيئات. Indeed, Allah has written the good deeds and the evil deeds. ثم بين ذلك. And then he explained that فمن هم بحسنة فلم يعملها كتبها الله تبارك وتعالى عنده حسنة كاملة. Whoever من هم, that whoever was, he considered, or he was on the point that he thought about and was about to do. This is the meaning of the word hamma. So فَمَنْ هَمَّ بِحَسَنَةٍ, whoever thought and strongly considered and was about to do a good deed, that he was thinking of doing it, he had the intention to do it, but he did not do it, then Allah Tabarak wa Ta'ala will write for him for that a complete good deed. وَإِنْ هَمَّ بِهَا فَعَمِلَهَا كَتَبَهَا اللَّهُ عَشْرَ حَسَنَاتٍ إِلَى 700 ضِعْفٍ إِلَى أَضْعَافٍ كَثِيرَةٍ. And if he then considered to do a good deed and he did it as well, Allah will then write for him from 10 to 700 to many multiples of that. وَإِنْ هَمَّ بِسَيِّئَةٍ فَلَمْ يَعْمَلْهَا كَتَبَهَا اللَّهُ تَعَالَى عِنْدَهُ حَسَنَةً كَامِلَةً. And if he intended to do an evil deed, but he did not do that deed, then Allah the Exalted will write that for him as a complete good deed. وَإِنْ هَمَّ بِهَا فَعَمِلَهَا كَتَبَهَا اللَّهُ سَيِّئَةً وَاحِدَةً. And if he thought about it and was considering to do it, and he then did it, then Allah will write for him a single evil deed. Reported by Bukhari and Muslim. So the Shaykh goes on to explain that the first part of the hadith, إِنَّ اللَّهَ كَتَبَ الْحَسَنَاتِ وَالسَّيِّئَاتِ, indeed Allah has written the good deeds and the evil deeds. Then this first part of the hadith actually has two meanings. What does this mean? It can either refer to the writing in Al-Lawhul Mahfuz, right? Inna Allah kataba al-hasanat was-sayyi'at. What does that mean? It means Allah has written all the good deeds and all the evil deeds of every person in the preserved tablet. So this is referring to the kitaba, which is sabiqa, which has preceded. It has come before. And so the Shaykh says that indeed Allah has written in Al-Lawh al-Mahfuz every single thing. Inna kulla shay'in khalaqnahu biqadar. Indeed, everything have we created biqadar, with determination, with decree. And he also said, وَكُلُّ صَغِيرٍ وَكَبِيرٍ مُسْتَطَرٍ. That every small and large thing is inscribed. It's written. And so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has written the good deeds and the evil deeds in Al-Lawh al-Mahfuz. And then when a person does those deeds, then they will be recorded in accordance to what Allah's wisdom and what His justice and what His bounty necessitates. Right? So in other words, really, there's two writings basically. So the first writing is what Allah has written of all things to happen, and this includes the good deeds and the evil deeds of the people. So this is already written. And then when the servant does those deeds, then how those deeds will be written has been explained in this hadith. right? This is how they'll be written. These are the principles upon which they will be written. And this is obviously in accordance with Allah's wisdom. So there's wisdom in this, and there's adl, there is justice in this, and there is fadl. There is Allah's bounty in this. And that's what we will see from the way Allah Azza wa Jal has apportioned the reward and the multiples of reward and the sin. So the Shaykh says, so really there are two writings. There is a kitabah which is sabiqah, which precedes. None knows this except Allah Azza wa Jal. So every single one of us, فَكُلُّ وَاحِدٍ مِنَّا لَا يَعْلَمُ مَاذَا كَتَبَ اللَّهُ لَهُ مِنْ خَيْرٍ أَوْ شَرٍ حَتَّى يَقَعَ ذَلِكَ الشَّيْء. So all of us, we do not know what Allah has written for us of good deeds and evil deeds. We don't know until it actually occurs. Until we do the deed, until Allah's decree occurs, it's only then that we know Allah wrote this upon me. Allah wrote this for me. Allah wrote this upon me. That's when we know. This is the kitaba sabiqa. And then there is the kitaba which is lahiqa, which is the subsequent, writing. And this is when a person, and this is what's explained in the hadith, right? So this is the kitaba which is lahiqa, whatever is mentioned in this hadith. So the first thing that was mentioned, when a person does a deed, it is written for him in accordance with what wisdom, justice, and fadl, Allah's bounty, necessitates. And this is explained, ثُمَّ بَيِّنَ ذَلِكَ, then he explained it. Then the Messenger of Allah explained what that writing is. So he said, first of all, a person, إِذَا حَمَّ بِحَسَنَةٍ, إِذَا حَمَّ. Hamma, when you have hum for something, this is more than just like, it's not just like a quick thought or it's more of a, when you have hum for something, it is like you are considering and you are almost on the verge of, like you are about to, so it's more than just like a passing thought, right? It's like you are motivated and you are dedicated and you want to do the actual deed. However, if he doesn't do it, then Allah Azza wa Jal will write that for him as a complete deed. So an example would be a man, he wants to do wudu because he wants to recite the Quran. So he sat there and he's thinking about it and there's a desire to do so, and then it just happens that he, whatever reason might be, he doesn't do it and he's turned away from it. So this is written for him as a complete good deed. And as the Shaykh will explain, that just having the ham for a good deed is itself a good deed. And so that's why it's rewarded as a good deed. A second example, a man, رَجُلٌ حَمَّ أَن يَتَصَدَّقَ, he wants to give charity, and then he even has the specific wealth that he's appointed or he's put aside that he wants to give, used to give the charity. And then he doesn't eventually give the charity. This is still written for him a complete good deed. Another man, he had ham to pray 2 raka'ahs, but then he didn't manage to do so. This person is also written for him a complete good deed. So now a question arises, the Shaykh says, how can it be written for him a good deed when he didn't even do anything? He didn't do no good deed. How can he be credited with a good deed? So the Shaykh says the answer to this is that indeed, inna fadl Allahi wasi'. This is the bounty of Allah. This is where the fadl of Allah. So remember, in this hadith, there is the hikmah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, there is the adl, the justice of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and there is the fadl. There is the excellence, the bounty, the favor of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is something that Allah gives. So he said that this ham, that this person, occurred from him, this itself is considered to be a hasana. Why? Because the heart, it's from the nature of the heart. لأن القلب حمام. Hammam is, where a person has serious thought and seriously thinks about doing something, and it's not just like a passing thought or an idea, but the heart is kind of like set on doing something, right? And this is the nature of the heart. Either it could be to do something evil or to do something good, but when this person has this hum in his heart with khair, then this is considered to be a good deed in itself, and it is written down for him. Now from this point we go to the second scenario or the second situation. If this person now goes ahead and he does the deed, now it is a reward of 10 times to 700 times to many multiples of that. And this again is the fadl of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This variation that you see in the hadith, this variation from 10 to 700 to even multiples of that, what is it based upon? It is based upon sincerity to Allah. So when a person, the greater a person is more sincere, his reward is greater. And the more a person is closer to the Sunnah and following the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, then again his worship will be more complete and his reward will be greater as well. So again, this is in accordance with ikhlas and in accordance with al-mutaba'ah. This is a second scenario. Now the third scenario is the evil. وَإِنْ هَمَّ بِسَيِّئَةٍ فَلَمْ يَعْمَلْهَا كَتَبَهَا اللَّهُ تَعَالَى عِنْدَهُ حَسَنَةً كَامِلَةً. So even the evil deed, a man who wants to steal, for example, and then he remembers Allah, and fear of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala now overtakes him. So he abandons the theft, he abandons stealing. And this will be written for him as a complete good deed because he abandoned doing ma'asiyah, abandoned disobedience. And so he will be rewarded for that. Just as we see in another hadith, in another version of the hadith, in another version of this hadith, there's further explanation. Allah Azza wa Jal, He says, إِنَّمَا تَرَكَهَا مِنْ جَرَّائِ. Right? Allah Azza wa Jal says, indeed, He abandoned it for my sake. For my sake. Min ajli, meaning for my sake. So He wanted to do a munkar, an evil, such as, let's say, backbiting, for example. And then he remembered that this is haram, this is muharram, it's prohibited. So then he abandons it for the sake of Allah. This type of person will be given a complete good deed. This is the third scenario. And the fourth scenario, فَإِنْ عَمِلَ السَّيِّئَةَ كُتِبَ سَيِّئَةً وَاحِدَةً فَقَطْ. If he then goes and does the evil deed, this will be then written for him as an evil deed, one evil deed, and it will not be extended any more than that. Allah Azza wa Jal, He says in the Quran, مَنْ جَاءَ بِالْحَسَنَةِ فَلَهُ أَشْرُ أَمْثَالِهَا وَمَنْ جَاءَ بِالسَّيِّئَةِ فَلَا يُجْزَى إِلَّا مِثْلَهَا وَهُمْ لَا يُظْلَمُونَ. So whoever comes with a good deed, then he will have 10 times its like. And whoever comes with an evil, then he will not be recompensed except with its like, and they will not be wronged in any way. Surah Al-An'am, Surah 6, verse 160. So, what does this hadith indicate? It shows دليل على اعتبار النية وأن النية قد توصل صاحبها إلى الخير. This again is the intention, and how the intention can make a person reach goodness and attain reward. Now there's one clarification here, and it's something that we covered previously as well, which is that in this third scenario, when a person leaves an evil deed after having thought about it and considering it and wanting to embark upon it, this is this applies when a person withholds from doing it because he remembers Allah. And he knows that this is going to be disobedience, and he remembers Allah, he fears Allah, and then he prevents himself from doing the deed because of the fear of Allah. But there are other scenarios where a person, he embarks upon evil, he intends the evil, but it is circumstances that prevent him from doing that deed. Not that he pulled himself back at the last minute or whenever and feared Allah and withheld, but it's circumstances from the qadr of Allah, and the proof for this is the hadith that we mentioned previously. إذا التقى المسلمان بسيفهما فالقاتل والمقتول في النار. Right? When two Muslims get together with their swords, then both the one killing and the one killed is in the hellfire. Why should the one killed be in the hellfire? It's because he, just like the killer, had the full intention to kill his fellow Muslim. And the only reason he didn't manage to kill the fellow Muslim is that because he got overwhelmed. But had he got the upper hand, then most certainly he would have killed that other Muslim. Right? So therefore his intention was always present, but it was pure qadr of Allah that stopped him, that he didn't attain what he intended to do. So he is counted as the one who actually did the deed. Similar to the example we gave before, you have a thief, for example, he plans everything, his theft, he has his tools, or he brings his ladder, or he brings whatever means that he has with him. He makes his observations, he watches, he plans everything, the timing and so on and so forth, the getaway. Then he embarks upon it, he goes, and he's almost about to complete the theft, and then it could be maybe this, some police or some people, or maybe his ladder wasn't tall enough, or whatever. Something is stops him from completing the theft. Now this person didn't not do the theft because he thought, I fear Allah and this is a sin and I'm taking someone's right, I better stop this because I will be punished in the hereafter. No, he didn't. That's not what made him stop that. Right? What made him stop is the fact that he wasn't able, due to reasons outside of his control, he wasn't able to do that. So this person is not like the scenario number 3. This person will be treated as if he did the deed. So this is the end of that hadith. So again, this applies until even abandoning evil, right? So the niyyah, not only is it for doing good deeds, where it has to be purely for the sake of Allah, but even in moments where you fear Allah and you are enticed, or you are being incited to sin, or you've embarked about to commit a sin, you have ham for sin, then even in that moment, having sincere intention, fearing Allah and having the right intention, then even in that scenario, the issue of the niyyah comes into play. This now brings us to the final hadith of the chapter, hadith number 12, and it's again another hadith which indicates the purity of intention and how sincere intention, good deeds and sincere intention allows the servant to make tawassul to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in times of hardship, in times of calamity, in times of difficulty. And so he uses that to bring relief to himself from hardship and from calamity. So this is a hadith عن أبي عبد الرحمن عبد الله بن عمر بن الخطاب رضي الله عنه قال سمعت رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم يقول that he said انطلق ثلاثة نفر ممن كان قبلكم. There were 3 men from the people from before you who embarked upon a journey until they wanted to take shelter, or they wanted to take sleep for the night. So they went into a cave, they entered the cave, and then a rock slipped and covered from the mountain, it covered the mouth of the cave. So they said, nothing إنه لا ينجيكم من هذه الصخرة إلا أن تدعوا الله بصالح أعمالكم. They said, nothing is going to save you from this rock that has blocked the mouth of the cave, except that you call upon Allah by mention of your righteous deeds, with your righteous deeds. So then one man, قال رجل منهم, and he began and he said, oh Allah, there used to be 2 elderly parents of mine. And I did not used to take any drink at night before them. Neither me, nor my family, nor my mal, my possessions. What he means by that is like the slaves, the servants and the slaves. So one day what happened is that as he was busy with attending to the flock or out in the field, and he wasn't able to come to them until they'd actually slept. So he took some milk and he came back and he found them asleep. So he said, I did not want to disturb them, and nor did I want to give to drink to my family or to my servants and slaves before them. So I had the vessel in my hand and I waited until they awoke from their sleep. And this did not happen until the break of Fajr, of dawn. And my children were at my feet, hungry. So then the parents, they awoke. So they took from the drink, and oh Allah, Allahumma in kuntu fa'altu dhalika ibtigha'a wajhik fafarrij anna. So he said, oh Allah, if I had done this seeking your face, then grant us relief from that which we are in with respect to this rock. And so what happened is that the rock budged slightly. However, it wasn't enough for them to escape. Then another man came and he said, oh Allah, I used to have a cousin, and she was the most beloved of people to me. I used to love her with an intense love, as men love women. So I desired her, and so, however, she withheld herself from me until some years passed, and then she came back to me and I gave her 120 dinars in exchange for her being alone with me. So she did that, and until when I was just about able to basically get my way with her and sit and do whatever he wanted to do, she said, ittaqillaha wa la tafudda al-khatama illa bihaqqih. She said, fear Allah and do not break the seal except with its right, with the right, meaning in marriage. So then I turned away from her, yet she was the most beloved of people to me. And I even left the gold, the dinars, the 120 dinars, I left them with her. And then he said, Allahumma in kuntu fa'altu dhalika bitigha'a wajhik fafruj anna ma nahnu fihi. Oh Allah, if I did that seeking your face, then grant us relief from that which we are in. And so the rock moved a little bit more, however not enough to enable them to leave the cave. Then a third one came along and he said, oh Allah, I hired a number of people for some work, and I gave them their wages, except for one man. He left his wages and he went. So I took the wages and then I used them, and I managed to multiply them and gain from those wages until I had much wealth. And so this man came back after a while and he said, Ya Abdullah, O Abdullah, slave of Allah, servant of Allah, adda ilayya ajri, give me my wage. So I said to him, everything you see here is from your wage, is from your recompense. From the camels, from the al-baqar, the cows, from the ghanam, from the flock, the sheep, everything, all of it is yours. So this man is thinking, I've come to ask for my wages, and this man is giving me all of this, the wealth that I see. So he thought that the man was mocking him. He said, Ya Abdullah, la tastahzi'u bi. لا تستهزئ بي. Do not make mockery of me. So he said, I am not making mockery of you. And then he told him obviously what it was. So then the man took every single thing. He never left a single thing. He took every last bit of it. And so this man said, Allahumma in kuntu fa'altu dhalika btigha'a wajhik fafruj anna ma nahnu fih. Oh Allah, if I did that seeking your face, then grant us relief from that which we are in. And so finally the rock moved enough for them to be able to leave and to leave and to proceed. So here in this hadith, the Shaykh goes on to explain the hadith. So he says, first of all, al-mabit, fa'awahumul mabit. That simply means that they went into to sleep in the cave, to take shelter, to take rest. And this is what people used to do. They used to go into a cave either to escape the severe heat of the sun, or it would be, to rest in there, or to take the night shelter in there, whatever is similar to that. So when they went in there, the rock, by the qadr of Allah, by the power of Allah and qadr of Allah, it closed the mouth of the cave, and they were not able to move it because it was a huge rock. So then they realized that the only thing we can do is to make tawassal to Allah by way of their good deeds. And so each of these three good deeds, what are these three good deeds? The first one is birrul walidain, righteousness to parents, from the greatest of good deeds. Also there is al-iffah at-tamah. This is, complete chastity and purity. And the third one is, wara' and nush. Wara' is to fear Allah, and nush, which is to be sincere, to be sincere in dealings with other people, complete sincerity and transparency with other people in dealings. So these were the three deeds that these three men that they did. The Shaykh goes on to explain the first man. He recounts what is in the hadith, that this man had two elderly parents, and he also had his wife, his children, his ahl, and he also had his mal meaning here like al-ariqa, meaning the slaves and the servants and whatever is like that. And so the Shaykh repeats the story again, as you see, that he was held back and he couldn't give them the drink. So he came and they fell asleep, and he waited at their, right in front of them, waiting for the moment that they wake up. Alongside that, his children, maybe crying from, they're hungry. His wife is there, his slaves are there, his servants are there, all waiting. But he waits for his parents, and that doesn't happen till the break of Fajr. And so this deed he did out of utmost respect and benevolence and kindness, and serving his parents, because they raised him and so on and so forth. This is from the great, tremendous deeds by which he made tawassal to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And he said, "Oh Allah, if I did that seeking your face," meaning that when he did that, he did it sincerely and purely for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So the Shaykh says, وَفِي هَذَا دَلِيلٌ عَلَى الْإِخْلَاصِ لِلَّهِ عَزَّ وَجَلَّ فِي الْعَمَلِ وَأَنَّ الْإِخْلَاصَ عَلَيْهِ مَدَارٌ كَبِيرٌ فِي قَبُولِ الْعَمَلِ. Right? That ikhlas is a mighty affair, and the acceptance of an action revolves around this issue of ikhlas. And that's why Allah Azza wa Jal accepted this wasila, this means that they took. The second is a youth who used to have a cousin, used to love her severely and intensely, in the same way that men love women, and he wanted to have her for himself, and he desired her. And so what happened, meaning that he wanted to commit zina, unlawful, haram, he wanted to commit zina with her. However, she did not agree at the beginning. Then what happened is that some poverty, extreme poverty occurred. And she became, she fell into extreme poverty. So she was compelled in giving herself up to commit zina because he offered her 120 dinars, dinars of gold, and so that he could have his way with her. And when he was about to have his way, she said this mighty word, because in that moment she feared Allah herself, and then she said this word to him as well: ittaqillah wa la tafudda al-khatama illa bihaqqihi. Fear Allah and do not break the seal except with its right. So she made him fearful of Allah. She made him fear Allah. And she said and indicated that if he wanted to do this in the right way, meaning in marriage, the proper marriage, and with the dowry and everything and all the things that come with marriage, then that she has no issue or problem with that. But the fact that he's going to break the seal without your right, then this is something that she does not want. And this is disobedience. And so she said, ittaqillah, when she came to that realization herself. And then she said this kalima, this word, which came from the depths of her heart, as the Shaykh says. This word, it entered into her heart first, ittaqillah. And then she then said it and expressed it to him. And so this man then, obviously, it took hold of him. And even though he still continued to love and to want this, this girl, but he left it and he abandoned it, and he allowed her to keep the dinars. He left it with her, and so this was it's from the greatest types of restraint and sacrifice that a person can have. Because in that circumstance, the da'i, the thing that invites you and entices you to do what is haram, it is an overwhelming, powerful, feeling that few people would be able to hold back from in that moment, in the spur of that moment, when nobody is present, and so that word ittaqillah took hold of him, and he pulled himself back. And he left it and abandoned it, and he even left all of the dinars, the gold, with her. And so he said, "Oh Allah, if you know that I did this for your sake, then give us relief from that which we are in." And so this is from the ayat of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The Shaykh says, this the rock did not move enough for them to leave, because Allah Azza wa Jal wanted maybe another person to make the tawassal, so he didn't give them full relief. So then the third man came along, and then the Shaykh goes on to explain again the third man. And so this third man is to do with amana. So these are different qualities. The second one was al-iffa, seeking purity and chastity for oneself, which is a great and mighty thing. And the first one was righteousness to parents, and the third one is al-amana, al-islah wal-ikhlas fil amal, which is being righteous and being upon rectification and being sincere in one's interactions and deeds. So this man, obviously, he goes on to mention the story that this man, he hired some workers for some work. He gave them all their wages except for one, who left his wages. He didn't take them, and then this person, he used that wealth to multiply that wealth, through business, through trade, and then he managed to acquire like a small fortune of cows and camels and all sorts of lots of wealth, possessions. So when this man came and he said, "Give back to me what is due to me," so the man, without any hesitation, said, "Everything you see here, it belongs to you, take it." And the man initially thought he was being mocked. And then when the man said, "I'm not mocking you, this is all yours," then he took every last single bit of it. And notice how this man didn't say, spare me a sheep, or spare me a cow, or take half of it, or I'm the one who I'm the one who took it, and with my skill, with my intelligence, with my business acumen, with, I worked and I multiplied it for you, so why don't we go halves, or why don't we? He didn't do any of this. He didn't engage in any of this, negotiation or wanting anything, because that was the man's wages. He used the man's wages, and so he gave him back his due right, and he did it for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If there was any portion that he wanted himself, then he would have said, leave me a sheep, leave me a camel, or why don't we go halves, why don't we go, you take a third, I'll take 2/3, because I'm the one. He didn't do any of this. The fact that he said, take every last bit of it, is a sign of his sincerity, a sign of his amana, of being a trustworthy person, which if you leave your wealth with somebody, they will protect it for you. In this case, it's not even protection, it's actually he's grew it for you, and he's created a fortune for you, right? This is amana. This is, like an extreme of trustworthiness in being entrusted with other people's wealth. It can also be with other people's honor, with other people's, there's different scenarios where there is an amana upon you. So here this man gave everything, and he didn't complain about, the man took everything. And so the man said, oh Allah, if you know that I did this, notice he didn't say, oh Allah, notice how these three men did not say, oh Allah, I did this sincerely for your sake. They did not make the claim of sincerity. They didn't say, oh Allah, I sincerely for your sake did this. What did they say? They said, oh Allah, Allahumma in kuntu fa'altu dhalika liwajhika. Oh Allah, if I had done that for your sake, then grant us relief. So we see that all of these men, they made tawassul to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with their righteous deeds which they had done, and which they believed that they did for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Yes, we know internally, we can have an idea that we didn't seek the world, we didn't seek to show off, but we can't say with certainty. We have to have this adab with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Oh Allah, if you know that I did this deed sincerely for your sake, if you know, then grant me such and such. So in this hadith there are many benefits. First of all, the fadila of birrul walidain, the virtue and the excellence and the status of being righteous, obedient, loyal, obedient to your parents. It's from the righteous deeds which help you out of calamities, right? To be righteous to your parents. Later on in your life, you might face calamities, you might face hardships. And if you served your parents sincerely for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, not because you want your parents' wealth, not because you want your parents to do favors for you, not because, whatever reason it might be, but you do it because they are your parents, because Allah has commanded birrul walidain. That's why you do it, seeking the face and the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Then maybe later on in your life, there will be a time when you might need to make tawassul to Allah, in a time of hardship, in a time of calamity. Then you start thinking, well, what deeds do I have? What do I have in my favor of deeds? Right? Also in this hadith is the fadila of al-iffa. Al-iffa min az-zina. The virtue and the excellence of being chaste and pure from falling into zina. And that when a person, he withholds himself, he maintains his or her chastity, despite having the ability to do so, then this is from فَذَلِكَ مِنْ أَفْضَلِ الْأَعْمَالِ, from the most excellent of the righteous deeds. And it is also established in the hadith from the Prophet ﷺ that a person who withholds himself, that he will, from this evil deed, despite having the ability to do so, then he will be of the 7 who will be shaded by the shade of Allah on the Day of Judgment, when there is no shade except His shade. In that hadith it occurs, رَجُلٌ دَعَتْهُ امْرَأَةٌ ذَاتُ مَنْسَبٍ وَجَمَالٍ فَقَالَ إِنِّي أَخَافُ اللَّهِ. This is a man, he finds himself alone with a woman who has, a high standing, she has a high position in society of nobility and has beauty. And he says, Inni akhafullah, I fear Allah. Right? So this man, the Shaykh says, he, a woman managed to get him alone, and he said, I fear Allah. I fear Allah. And so what is this? This is kamalul iffah. Kamalul iffah. This is now perfect chastity. And, this is from the people who Allah will shade on the day of judgment. And so notice how in these examples, or in this particular example, it's going back to the same issue we said before, that when you abandon a sin, it's not because you were prevented from the sin by other reasons. It's because you stopped and you thought and you said to yourself, I fear Allah. And this came from your heart and it affected you, and then you abandoned it, out of fear of Allah and His punishment and His displeasure. Many people who might be in these situations, they stop not because of the fear of Allah, but because some other reason. It could be for fear of maybe getting caught by the people, for fear of, or it could be just circumstances just stop you. This is not ikhlas, and this is not a sign of iffah. Iffah, pure chastity, is when a person is in that situation. There's nothing to stop him, right? And he has the full strength and power and force of the shahwa, and then he fears Allah, and the fear of Allah dominates and overwhelms, and he, pulls himself away from that situation. Also in this hadith, the Shaykh says, وَفِي هذا الحديث أيضا دليل على فضل الأمانة وإصلاح العمل للغير. Also in this hadith is the excellence of al-amana, being trustworthy, and also in rectifying the affairs of other people. So in this case, this man was entrusted with the wealth, or with the wages, which he kept in custody, and he used it, and he essentially, as the Shaykh says, al-islah wa islah al-amal lil-ghayr, which is to rectify the affair for somebody else. So he basically worked in the interest of that man whom he hired. But, and he could have given him, he could have said, okay, well, here's your wages which I owed you for that week or for that day. And he could have just given him just those wages, and that would have been the end of the matter. But he didn't. From his amana and from his ikhlas to his brother, and from his sincerity in dealings with his brother, he gave him everything that from which he profited. So also from the fawaid of this hadith, the Shaykh says also, is the qudra of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, in the sense that he made the rock to move without any other means. Like this is pure qadr of Allah, and it's pure Allah's intervention in the asbab, right? There was no other means or way that the men couldn't move it. There was no other way. There's no way that the wind could move it. There's no way an animal could move it. There was nothing that could move it at all, and it had to be just the pure qadr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Allah intervening and causing the rock to move. And also in this hadith, the Shaykh says that from the ibar, from the lessons, is that anna Allah ta'ala sami'ud du'a. Allah is the one who listens to the dua. Allah listened to those men, and He responded to those men. Also from the ibar, from the lessons, is anna al-ikhlas min asbabi tafriji al-kurabat. That sincerity is from the ways of, removing calamities and hardships. And because every man said, Allahumma in kuntu fa'altu dhalika, oh Allah, if I did that for your sake, then give us relief from that which we are in. So the point being from all of this, that what this shows us is that a believer by necessity, he must work righteous deeds, he must have sincerity in those deeds, and he must have in his possession deeds which he believes to the best of his, that he's tried to do them for the sake of Allah. Because there will come a time in his life where he will be in severe need of any good that he has done, the ikhlas that he tried his best in order to help himself from difficult situations in relation to himself or his family or his children. He could be in a state of poverty, he could be in a state of affliction, he could be, Allah knows best what he has written for each of us as his servants. And so, as Allah says in the Quran, وَتَزَوَّدُوا فَإِنَّ خَيْرَ الزَّادِ التَّقْوَى, that make your provision, for indeed the best provision is taqwa. So that provision, in a way, that provision that we have for the hereafter, these are the circumstances where we see Allah Azza wa Jal, He listens to the one who is distressed. He answers the dua of the one who makes tawassul to Him by way of good deeds, by way of deeds which were sincere. So every believer is in need of the likes of these affairs, which is why a believer should constantly be thinking, what good deeds have I done today, which is my zad, which is my provision. What, before you go to bed, what did I earn today? Where's my provision for the hereafter and for later on in my life when I have calamities and hardships or difficulties? What did I earn today? What is there? And so this shows that accumulation of good deeds, striving upon ikhlas, this is something by necessity that the believer is concerned with. The Shaykh finishes by making a note, as for ar-riya, as for showing off, wal-i'adhu billah, and refuges with Allah, a person who does deeds except for show and to be heard of so that he's praised by the people, this is like the foam or the froth that you see on the ocean. There will be nothing. You see the foam and the froth, it comes for a while, and then it just vanishes and it's gone. And this is the nature of these deeds. They will not help a person. And we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the Shaykh makes a dua, that we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He bestows us and you with ikhlas in everything. And He doesn't make us, that He doesn't make for anyone else to have a share in our worship of Him. That it is purely and sincerely for Him alone, so that it is acceptable to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because we know that the Prophet also said in another hadith Qudsi that Allah Ta'ala, that He said, أَنَا أَغْنَى الشُّرَكَاءِ عَنِ الشِّرْكِ مَنْ عَمِلَ عَمَلًا أَشْرَكَ فِيهِ مَعِي غَيْرِي تَرَكْتُهُ وَشِرْكَهُ. I am the most unneedy of partners, of those with whom partners are set up, from having partners, from having shirk. Right? So meaning that of all of those from the shuraka who are set up as partners, because like in this world, you have a partner in business, you have a partner in this, you have, there's all types of partnerships that are made. And even people make for Allah other partners, right? Idols that they worship or others, so this happens. However, Allah says, Ana aghna shuraka. So of all the partners who are made partners, I am the most unneedy of them, of having any partners set up with me. Whoever does a deed in which he associates others with me, like as a partner, then I will abandon him and his shirk. So that means that your deed and you're abandoned. Taraktuhu wa shirka. So he is abandoned and his shirk is abandoned as well. Which shows that if you want aid from Allah, if you want your du'as to be accepted, if you want relief in times of calamity, then you absolutely must have sincerity to Allah in all your deeds, and of course an abundance of good deeds, and especially the deeds which are from these are no ordinary deeds that we see in this hadith. Birrul walidain, righteousness to parents, al-iffa, complete chastity, al-afaf, to be chaste, and to have complete amana, being trustworthy in one's dealings, and especially when it comes to dealing with the wealth of people or the honor of people. These are tremendous deeds, and especially so it's these types of deeds, the special, weighty, heavy types of deeds which reflect, strong, good character, upright moral character. These are the types of deeds that we should be displaying and having and preparing, for the time that we may be in need of these deeds to make tawassul to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so this brings us to the end of today's lesson, and also the end of the entire section, the first section, the bab on an-niyyah and making the niyyah present. So alhamdulillah, there was many benefits that we got from the Shaykh through the commentary. Maybe it's a good idea to review and revise, all the 12 ahadith and the benefits that we took from them, because they all cover different aspects, different, manifestations, different rulings to do with different scenarios in which a person's niyyah, a person's intention, his motive is tested and put to trial. So with that, we'll conclude. The next chapter is Bab al-Tawbah, a section or chapter on repentance, which again is from the most important of affairs. We see An-Nawawi rahimahullah, he put that second in his compilation, showing its importance. So inshallah we will begin that the next time that we meet up, inshaAllah ta'ala. So with that, we'll conclude today's lesson. Walhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen, wa sallallahu ala nabina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'een. If he only gave him back his wages. Because he Allah knows best. I don't know whether he would be sinful if he hadn't, but because that's physical wealth, it's like those actual coins, the same coins. It's not like it's not like electronic transfer where you don't have anything tangible, like you can't apportion, well, these zeros and ones belong to you. This actual, real, tangible, physical wealth, gold, right? So if those wages are his wages, they belong to him, it's his property now, right? Then in that respect, then obviously it's worthy for him to give that man what's his due. So he used that which is actually his property. It's his haqq, it's his right, isn't it? Right? So he's now used that and he's grew it into like a fortune. So that belongs to that man, because the original property, what was that man's property. So in this respect, well, I don't know what the answer would be, that, would he have been sinful if he just gave him the wealth, the dinars or whatever it might be. Allahu alim, I don't know. I've not come across any discussion of that. But from the angle of, because this is al-amana, and as the Shaykh said, islahu, it's like rectification of the affair for another person. So it shows like the greatness in character that you've. This is that man's wealth. I'll grow it for him and look after his interests. It shows complete honesty. It shows complete nusх. Nusх meaning, complete, utmost sincerity in dealing with another person. Complete transparency. To have nasiha. This is the hadith as well. Ad-deenun nasiha, ad-deenun nasiha, ad-deenun nasiha. The religion is nasiha, sincerity of purpose. To have utmost sincerity of purpose to others, to the book of Allah, to his book, to Allah, to the book, to the messenger, to the Muslims, and so on and so forth. So he displayed all of that. But he didn't necessarily have to. But as for whether he would have been sinful, I don't know. Allah knows best.